Hello everybody and welcome to the Winecast. It's back to tackling a varietal, and this one is a personal favorite of mine, Gewürztraminer. But is it a varietal or variety, as the grammar division of the wine police like to remind us, or is it something else? It's actually a really good question because Gewürztraminer is often described as a member of a family of grapes, specifically the Traminer family. And while I've used this metaphor myself, I'm starting to see that this is actually a misleading metaphor to use when talking about this collection of grapes. Because, as botanist and grape researcher José Villamos has pointed out, talking about families like, say, the Bordeaux family of grapes implies relationships between grapes that are analogous to parent and child or sibling relationships based on the sharing of genetic material between varietals. But that's not what's going on with Traminer. If you saw the cast on clones, and if you didn't, I'd strongly encourage you to check it out at some point, you'll know that through the process of mutation, an individual example of a varietal can develop characteristics distinct from other examples of that varietal, and that mutation can be propagated by taking cuttings of the mutant vine and growing perfect copies or clones of it. Something like this is what happened to Traminer when, at some point in its history, an example of the original white form of the grape, also called SAVAGNIN BLANC in France, developed a color mutation that gave it a pink, actually a sort of copper-colored skin, with the resulting propagated mutation or clone coming to be called Roter Traminer, or red Traminer, or in French, Sauvignon Rose. This color mutation subsequently underwent another mutation called a muscat or aroma mutation that gave it an extremely expressive and floral nose and probably was the impetus behind the new name, Gewürz, or roughly spicy Traminer, that would be attached to this clone. So rather than seeing these grapes as members of a family, it would be more accurate to think of them as clonal variations or mutations of the same grape. This is something similar to what's going on with the various Pinot grapes, Noir, Gris, Blanc, Meunier, and so forth, that are also best thought of as variations on a single varietal that has, like Traminer, a pretty unstable genome. The actual origins of the Traminer grape are obscure, and though the name Traminer means from Tramin, namely a village in the far north of what is today Italy, José Villamos has marshaled some convincing evidence that the grape isn't originally from that area, but rather ended up with the name as a deliberate attempt by producers of the grape in Germany during the 1400s to take advantage of the good reputation that wines from Tramin had there at that time. Speaking of Germany, Villamos theorizes that Traminer originated somewhere in southern Germany or perhaps northeast France, based on the incidence of a large number of grapes that resulted from crosses with Traminer in these areas, suggesting that this is Traminer's home turf. Genetic research also suggests that there's a parent-child relationship between Pinot and Traminer, with Pinot likely being the parent, so it seems that Traminer comes by its unstable genome honestly. Villamos also documents a connection between the name Gewürztraminer and the Pfalz or Palatinate region of Germany, suggesting that this region is where the muscat mutation that gave a vine of Roter Traminer its aromatic profile took place. Impressive as Villamos' work is, I should mention an alternate theory that Traminer is native to Spain and that it made its way to eastern France and to Germany from there. For a slightly fuller treatment of that theory, check out my cast on the wines of the Jura region, where Traminer remains a very important grape. For a grape as intriguing as Gewürztraminer, there really isn't much of it planted worldwide, with maybe around 8,000 hectares or 20,000 acres under vine. The best known and probably most extensive plantings are in France, specifically in Alsace, where it's the second most planted grape in the region after Riesling. Klevener de Heiligenstein, a rare but permitted grape for the Alsace AOC that also goes by Sauvignon Rose, is just Roter or red Traminer, the non-aromatic pink skin mutation of Traminer that we talked about earlier. There may be as much as 1,000 hectares or 2,400 acres of Gewürztraminer grown in Germany, but it's hard to know for sure because German wine law regards Gewürztraminer and Roter Traminer as synonyms, and for all intents and purposes, as the same grape. There are also modest but noteworthy plantings in Australia, throughout the U.S., in Canada, the north of Italy, and Luxembourg. So, what are this grape and the wines made from it like? Well, before discussing its sensory characteristics, I'll just note that by all accounts, Gewürztraminer is a hard grape to grow. It ripens to very high sugar levels, and if the climate is too warm, it'll exhaust all of its acid and leave the wine made from it flabby and maybe even a little sweet. But if it's picked too soon, the aromatics won't have time to fully develop. So timing and attention are key for this grape. When things go right, though, the wines made from it are complex and compelling, with a remarkable nose and palate that foregrounds honey, orange blossom, rose water, and ripe stone fruit like peaches and nectarines. But the signature descriptor is lychee. And if you've never had this little fruit and it's within your ability to get some, you owe yourself a trip to the market and then to your wine merchant so you can get a sense of the remarkable aromatic affinity between the two. Because of its high sugar content, Gewurz can be easily vinified across the spectrum from dry to very, very sweet and concentrated. The potential for sweetness and the remarkable aromatics make for great pairing with highly seasoned and spicy foods, and I've successfully matched it to various regional Indian and Chinese cuisines, as well as Korean, Thai, Vietnamese, and Ethiopian dishes. And when the aromatics are really intense and spot on, you can skip the old rule about white wine with white meat like you can with a good New Zealand soft blanc. Though note in advance that Gewürztraminer won't typically have the intense acid profile that a soft blanc will. Though this grape is pink-skinned, it's not often made into a rosé, at least as far as I can tell, and curiously, I've seen it made into an orange or extended skin contact wine more often than as a proper pink. But if anyone knows of any good rosés of Gewürztraminer, please let me know in the comments. So, all excited to try some righteous Gewürz but don't know where to start? That's pretty easy for this grape. Head straight to Alsace and feel free to spend some time there tasting across the sweetness spectrum and across a variety of producers. One thing to watch out for, though, is that with the exception of Alsace's famous late harvest and occasionally botrytized dessert wines, how sweet the wine is will not always be clearly or consistently labeled, so be prepared to do some research before you buy. I would love to try more German Gewürztraminers, but thanks to the lack of proper distinction in labeling between Gewürz and Roter Traminer, what you get can be a genuine crapshoot. And you may buy a bottle labeled Gewürz and not get a whole lot in the way of aromatics, or conversely, you may pop the cork on a bottle labeled Roter Traminer and get a snootful of delicate flowers, lychee, and honey. So see if you can do some research on exactly what you're buying here as well. Once you want to move beyond Alsace, or Germany if you're brave, the best bet is probably to poke around the web or to solicit advice from someone with experience with this grape and start checking out various producers who are working with it in the other countries where it's planted, at least to the degree that you can find these wines in your area. Finally, wherever your Gewürz comes from, don't pass up the opportunity to take advantage of its incomparable food friendliness. Make some of your favorite recipes, especially the ones with a little bite to them, and see what happens. Thanks for joining me for another Winecast. I'm hoping to get another varietal, Nebbiolo, on for next week, and then use that as a lead-in to talking about the Piedmont after that, so please stay tuned for those. I'm getting ready to tackle another certification, though. Yep, it's time to hit the WSET 3. So my cast may get a little spotty over the next couple of months as I make more time to study, but I'll do my best to stay on top of things. And hopefully my own cast will be as helpful to me in getting ready to certify as so many of you have very graciously said they were to you. I'm your host, the Unknown Winecaster, and I'm out. Enjoy the grape, but always enjoy it responsibly.